Iran and the United States are holding a second round of talks in Rome over the Islamic Republic's controversial nuclear program. Now, this follows a meeting between U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who met with Omani mediators in Muscat last week. Joining us now to take stock of where things stand is Alex Vatanka from the Middle East Institute. Alex, it's wonderful to have you on.
Great to be with you, Nivrita.
Alex, you know, the negotiations have resumed after quite a long hiatus. Help us understand at this stage, what are the main sticking points and what do both sides hope to achieve?
Right. If you don't mind, let me give a quick background. The meeting that was held in the country of Oman in the city of Muscat last Saturday, April the 12th, was the first time that Iran and the United States actually sat down and sort of had, if you will, kind of face-to-face, although it wasn't explicitly face-to-face, but it was the closest thing to a face-to-face they've had in 7 years, since going back to 2018 when President Trump, the first President Trump, pulled away from the nuclear deal of 2015. So last week, the ice was broken. Today, a week later, the question is, can they build on that? Can they create confidence-building measures? Can they agree on the basic parameters for the talks to continue? That remains to be seen. That's the big kind of heavy lift for today, for them to prove to us that if they can or if they cannot.
And that's the thing, because there was some optimism, is that fair to say, following that first round of talks in Oman? Both sides described it as positive. Should we be expecting any sort of a breakthrough in Rome?
Wow. So Nivrita, as you know, Iran's nuclear program has been with us one way or another since 2002. So you have to forgive me if I'm sort of cautious. I'm at least on the fence. Look, there's definitely some ground here for optimism. The Iranians want to talk. The American side wants to talk. The question is, what are they going to talk about? I think the issue of talking about Iran's nuclear program more or less should be pretty straightforward. If the United States agrees that Iran can have a civilian nuclear program, that I think provides us with enough for a framework for a deal. The question and the fear of the Iranians is that the American side will broaden the conversation to talk about other issues like Iran's agenda in the region and so forth. If that happens, then I have no idea where the talk's going to go.
Yeah, fair enough. We've learned to not believe it until we actually see it. And the other aspect of this that I do want to ask you about is the Donald Trump of it all, because the U.S. actually pulled out of a nuclear pact with Iran during Donald Trump's first term as president. And at the time, Trump was very outspoken about the issue. Take us, if you could help us recap that. What were his objections then, and how have things changed, if at all?
So Donald Trump was famously against the Obama nuclear deal of 2015 because he said it just didn't really take the fear or the danger of Iran one day having a nuclear weapon away, that there were sunset clauses that essentially Iran could have at some point in the future decide to weaponize. So he walked away, but he never was able to kind of come up with a better plan, if you will. And we saw in his first term, and even the Biden administration were unable to do anything much different than what the Obama administration achieved. So right now, the Trump administration has to make a decision. Do they want to dismantle Iran's nuclear program entirely, which some in his team want to do, or would Donald Trump settle for Iran having a nuclear program, but not weaponizing? And if that's the case, which the Iranian side are saying they're prepared to live with, then it's just really a question of verifying that Iran doesn't weaponize. Then it's about the technicalities. How do you make sure Iran doesn't weaponize? Shouldn't be that hard.
And Trump also, he's threatened to attack Iran if a deal isn't reached. And that's something he said repeatedly. What message would you say this sends to the region, especially in light of the fact that, we've seen Iran's support to militant organizations in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen?
Yeah, no, look, President Trump obviously wants to go in heavy in these negotiations. We've seen the deployment of lots of American military platforms to the region. That's really to get Iran's attention. That's not necessarily the intention here to go to war with the Iranians. And we have to remember, President Donald Trump is someone whose entire political career has been about warning against wars in the Middle East. He finds them to be costly. He finds them to be counterproductive to the American interest. So I really don't think Donald Trump wants to go to war with Iran, but I do think he wants to get Iran's attention. And the last thing the Iranians want to do is to try and make Donald Trump look bad in this whole affair because, Donald Trump, one thing he likes to do is to look good. He wants to be the winner. And really, it's up to Iran here to see if they can help him be the winner in this process.
Of course, we should talk about the Iran side of things because they've maintained that its nuclear program is for peaceful civilian purposes. Consistently, we've seen Iran has refused to consider a complete rollback. How do you see this playing out during these negotiations?
No, look, the Iranians are in a very bad place. They're sitting on top of a very angry Iranian population of 90 million people who basically, if I could be very crude about it, hate the regime. So the regime is in a bad place. Their economy is on the brink. Their sort of activities in the region over the course of the last year and a half have taken blow after blow with what has happened to Hamas, Hezbollah, Assad in Syria fell. So Iran is not in a good place. So actually, in many ways, you could argue this is the optimal moment for the Iranian regime to actually sit down, talk to this American president, who at the end of the day is not a regime changer. He really doesn't care who rules into Iran, does not have a grand strategy. So if I was Iran, regardless of what Trump did in his first term, right now, I can point to a lot of factors that actually suggest this is not a bad moment for the Iranians to cut a deal with this American president who has the US Congress pretty much on his side, at least the Republican side, and then take it forward from there and potentially avoid a very costly war that would be very different what the U.S. experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq. Iran is a whole different ballgame in terms of a potential adversary and one to fight with for the United States.
You know, just a final point, we also had the IAEA chief, that's the head of the Global Nuclear Watchdog, recently visit Tehran. What role do you see the IAEA playing in securing an agreement and ensuring, more importantly, its implementation?
Oh, it's hugely important. Look, as I said earlier, if this deal is going to be limited to Iran's nuclear program, the size of it, the depth of it, if you want to put the brakes on Iran's nuclear program, the IAEA will play a critical role. They are the ones with the expertise, with the inspectors, the ones who can see what's going on in Iran, the ones running around in the country, making sure whatever Iran does in the nuclear field does not end up going in the direction of a weaponization. So IAEA, if it's limited to a new nuclear deal, the way it was in JCPOA of 2015, has a critical role to play. But as I said, if the conversation takes a different turn, if we start talking about what Iran is doing in the region, Iran's ballistic missile program, human rights record, God knows there's so much to talk about, then IAEA will just be one component among many components. And that's depending on where you stand, or where you support this diplomatic track or not, could be bad or a good thing.
All right, so lots to watch on that front. Alex, we really appreciate you taking the time today and breaking that all down for us.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
That's Alex Vatanka of the Middle East Institute.